So what we're going to do next is share the following presentation from our colleagues in Senegal. We have a recorded presentation about the history of the Holocaust, another case of history that I certainly was not as exposed to when I was younger. So I'm really looking forward to this presentation. So we'll get that started in just a few moments.
Kutanu waliyabe lapifade gede mbulum sariya miade dube gelloji jamule gede gumbode gede yeto jabri soynango gede don koy tawnomi farbatan.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Aliounne Deme, the head of the archaeology lab at the Cheikh Anta Diop University. I did a lot of works on the Holocaust, on Jews in Senegal, also on the Senegalese soldiers in the concentration camps in Europe. I will be talking today about the remembrance, and we will be remembering Jews in Senegal and the Senegalese who died in concentration camps during World War II. I will be talking first about Senegal, the geography for those who don't know about Senegal, who don't know about where Senegal is located, also who don't know a lot about the history of Senegal. So I will take just maybe 2 minutes or less than that to talk about Senegal. Senegal in Africa. So you see, Senegal is located in West Africa. It is a tiny country, so it's a very small country, really facing the United States. It's a very small country, the size of South Dakota. So it's for those Americans who want to make a comparison. So it's really the size of Dakota or South Dakota. In terms of geography also, Senegal is really located in the Sahel. So it's the whole band south of the Sahara. And when you say it's the Sahel, of course, for those who remember, it's really a zone, it's really impacted by climate change. And when you say climate change, sometimes we talk about drought, sometimes we talk about really, or this food shortage, this climate crisis that really sometimes led to a lot of difficult condition for some people in the Sahel. Now a little bit about the history of Senegal. Okay, I will not be talking about really what happened pre-colonial Senegal, so it's going to be too far. So I will start with the 19th century. Senegal was colonized by the French, who imposed their direct rule. Direct rule is really assimilation policy, really, which was meant to make Senegalese become French. So to talk like French, to act like French, to be French. Sometimes a lot of people complain about that when they go to Paris, that, wow, the French are kind of thinking they are better than everybody else. But it's just really about the policy. It's really about the mindset, thinking that being French is very important. So that's really that idea that was taken to Senegal. And of course, there was something very important at that time, the 19th century. We're really talking about social Darwinism, the whole idea of racial classification, racial categorization, people thinking that when you belong to one race, you are better than you are superior to the other race. So since the white race was seen as being superior, so the French say it was their duty to come to Africa to civilize Africans. That's the whole idea of mission civilisatrice in French. And in English, the name was really white man burden. So it was really the burden of the white men to come civilize, Africans, to bring them to light. Okay. But of course, when when you talk about assimilation policy, when you talk about racial categorization, racial superiority, there were some Africans who resisted to that. So we have a lot of heroes who fought against that colonization. So this is not really the place to talk about them, but there was a lot of Africans who say no. So but I'm trying really to make people understand was that Africans did not just cross their hands and say, okay, hallelujah, come and colonize us. So there were some early Africans who fought using, armies, or really those also using culture, really. So the cultural liberation. Okay, but France ended up really winning the wars against those African heroes and ruling Senegal until 1960. So Senegal became independent in 1960. And the first president of Senegal was really Léopold Sédar Senghor. So he was really the one who took Senegal to independence. And Senegal is really, we were lucky to have somebody like Senghor, who was really educated, poet, really somebody in the arts, so, and who was really open-minded, and who was really in the process of building a nation. And so really the whole Senegalese nation was really in part built by Léopold Sédar Senghor. And he built it really according to democracy, human rights, but of course it was a process, from one-party system until 1974 to three-party system, and then since 1974, and in 1980 it became really an open party system, and really a lot of political parties. Senegal is considered one of the most powerful democracies in Africa because of its stability. It's very important. And the governing system is a multi-party republic, so with two legislative houses, the Senate and the National Assembly. But really the power is really in the National Assembly. And we have, like I said, very open democracy, more than 300 political parties. Sometimes we joke and we say that politics is our national sport. So when you say politics as a national sport, it's not really freedom of speech. So people are really open-minded about that. So, and Senegal is also one of the very few African countries that has never fallen to military coup. So we never had like a military coup. Always election, presidents are chosen by the people. And this is very, very important. Also, we have a freedom of press, religion, and association. We come to it. We have the three religions in Senegal: Islam, 90%, 5% Christian, and 5% of people who believe in African religion. Freedom of association, people are free to create the movement. Also, freedom of press, so we don't even know we have how many press organizations. We have a lot, which is also really very, very important for the communication and for the information. And the Constitution provides the separation of powers between the three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. So we have these three branches of governments, even though here also, like in a lot of countries, the executive is a little more powerful. So it's difficult to find the balance between the two branches of power and the three branches of government. 90% of the population, like I said earlier, are Muslims who practice a tolerant Islam. And Senghor, who was who was a practicing Catholic, was elected by the Muslim for 20 years already. So Senghor ruled from 1960 and 1980, and then, he was tired of ruling, so he decided December 31st, during his discourse to the nation, he decided that, he announced that he would retire, and he gave the power to his prime minister. And we have really something very important also about Senegal is really the vibrant and dynamic civil society, which is very vibrant, very dynamic, and this is very, very important it's part really of our Senegalese DNA. So, very civil societies that control government, that also ask for, human rights, for gender rights, rights of the minority, all these things. So it's really interesting. Senegal was also, during the colonial era, there was one minority in Senegal. It was a Jewish minority in Senegal. And it's really interesting to see what happened to them during World War II. Because Nazism, Hitler, their agenda was not just about Europe. They had a worldwide agenda. And also they hated not only Jews from Europe, but all Jews. And now it becomes very interesting to see what happened to the Jews outside of Europe during World War II. How they were treated. Was they treated directly by the Nazi, or indirectly by the Nazi through their allies? And in Senegal, after the defeat of France, the Vichy regime implemented in 1940 and in 1941 the anti-Jewish laws. You know, those anti-Jewish laws were decided in France, and then since Senegal was a French colony, those anti-Jewish laws were also applied in Senegal. And at that time, why Senegal? Because at that time, Dakar was the capital of Vichy French in West Africa. So it was really a very important place for France, for the French colonial empire. And Dakar was the capital. And this is why those anti-Jewish laws were applied against the Senegalese Jews and Jews living in Senegal. And not only those anti-Jewish laws were applied, but the anti-Jewish laws were applied by taking into consideration the context. The context is that there were some activities that were not important in France, but were very important in West Africa. So what they did was they extended those anti-Jewish laws to cover those activities, like forestry, like mining, like housing, like business license. So they extended to those activities. So you see, it means that those Jews who were living in Senegal, I will say really in West Africa, but because Dakar was the capital of West Africa, a lot of the Jews were living in Dakar. Okay. I did not even who are the Jews. We come to it. So those anti-Jewish laws were extended to cover those new activities that was really dominated by Jews in West Africa. And like all Jews, those in Senegal were forced to register. And the Governor General, Boisson, who was really representative of France, of Vichy French in West Africa, so he threatened those who did not want to register, because there were some Jews who say, well, if I register, then I'm a big problem. Also, for some of them, not to register was an act of resistance. So we had a lot of them who did not register and who were threatened by Boisson. And if you look at the registration files, those files show the Jews living in Senegal came from different countries. Some were Senegalese, others came from France, from Morocco, from Tunisia, from England, from Germany, from Poland, from Hungary, from Greece, from Holland, from Switzerland, and from Lebanon. Those who are from Senegal is really interesting because, you know, the Jews started really to come in Senegal during the Inquisition, the 16th century. So we have a lot of evidence about it. They settled in 3 areas, Joal, Rufisque, and Sali. Okay, so we don't have time. And they even had a synagogue in Rufisque. No, the synagogue was in Sali, but the synagogue is now destroyed really by the rise of the sea level. I have a student who is doing underwater archaeology, who's really, you know, he's her thesis, so master's thesis, was really trying to find that synagogue and see what we can have, because they had a synagogue, they had a rabbi Peregrino, all these things. So we're trying to really go deep down, see if we can recover the synagogue. So it's going to be really interesting to find it, see how it was, I mean, what it looked like and everything. So what happened to the Jews who decided to register? Those who did register lost their jobs because the Vichy regime was really giving priority to the non-Jews French citizen. Also, there was really a way to, because of the hate, really to get rid of those Jews in French West Africa. Also, we know that the vessels, so the boats carrying Jews, refugees from Europe to America, they had to stop in Dakar for refueling. And sometimes they were not welcomed by the Boisson administration. So also it was really another way of really making the life of the Jews, European Jews this time, very hard, because they can't, at that time, technology did not allow to travel from Europe to America without stopping to Dakar. And again, this is why also Dakar was a really strategic place, very, very important. And later on, this is why Dakar was being bombed by de Gaulle and the Allies, to try to recapture Dakar, because Dakar was really in a very strategic position. It was very important also for the French colonial empire. And anti-Semitism was so prevalent within the French community that some Jews fled to Liberia because they wanted to exile to the United States. Again, so this is really interesting. The anti-Semitism was not just about the government, was not about the administration. But again, because of that ideology, because of that propaganda, anti-Jewish propaganda, anti-Semitic propaganda, a lot of French citizens who lived in Dakar also hated Jews. So sometimes it's them who gave us information about Jews, about these things to the colonial administration. And what we ended up having was really some Jews saying, okay, this is no longer safe. So they go from Dakar to Liberia. And from Liberia, they try to exile to the United States. And Jews who were sent to Senegal by their company, they needed prior authorization from the colonial administration. And to get that authorization, first they have to undergo background checks. But it was really to speed, to slow the process, to discourage them and to make them feel that they are not welcome in Senegal. And very often, again, the colonial administration refuses entry to the Jewish workers under the pretext that the work could be done by a French citizen. And that was part of the problem. They are given authorization only if the work that they are supposed to do in Senegal, in West Africa, cannot be done by the French citizen. And most often, the work that they were doing in Senegal could be done by the French citizen. So the authorization to work, their work permit, their entry permit was refused. So again, they could not come to Senegal, or even for those who live in Senegal, they could not get a job. And of course, the question became, how do we get all this information? We get this information from the Senegalese National Archive, and there's a big archive in Senegal about Jews, about World War II. Also, we get it from oral testimony. We have two types of oral testimony. One from some Senegalese who were here, who witnessed some stuff during World War II. The other also from those archive, World War II archive, and also from the US Shoah Foundation oral testimony. And this is really interesting because we had some victims who testified about their experience in Senegal. And one of them is really interesting. His name is Zabruski. He's Polish origin. His name is in the colonial archives, but also you can find his testimony from the USC Shoah Foundation witness oral testimony. And it was really a very, very important luck, very good luck to have this kind of combination between what he's saying, what he said in the archive, and really having the victim himself talking about his experience. Again, you have all this data, and like I say now, we are trying to use archaeology also to get more and more data. It's really interesting. And what we get from this data is really the existence of a transit camp in Senegal area outskirts of Dakar called Sébikotane. So data obtained from the colonial archives and from the testimony of the victims reveal that in Senegal, some Jews were taken by the colonial administration in one internment camp at Sébikotane. There, they were taken to Sébikotane for forced labor. And again, Sébikotane is now included in the encyclopedia of Camp of Ghetto because some Jews lived there on the forced labor. And from Sébikotane, some Jews were forcibly sent to work at the Office du Niger in Mali. And the Office du Niger is very notorious for the large number of Africans who died there because of forced labor. And as a matter of fact, it was so bad that at one time the French government decided to close it. But again, it was reopened later on. And again, some Jews from Sébikotane were sent to the Office du Niger. And so this is Dakar, and Sébikotane is just here from Dakar to Thiès. And so it's really 28 kilometers outside of Dakar. Today we don't have, this has what is remaining from the area that we think was used, where Jews were taken to forced labor. We don't know yet where exactly that area was, but this is really what is remaining. So of course the work is in progress. Hopefully we'll get more information about what happened to the Jews who were taken here. But this is getting more and more difficult because Senegal's government is building a prison camp near here. Actually, we are thinking more and more, me and some colleagues, including one Rabbi Fisher, who is here in Senegal with his wife doing a PhD work on Senegalese wrestling. So we're trying to see if we can have really just a place, like to commemorate the event. And also really I'm involved in something bigger, because I did talk about the arrival of the Jews at Sali with the synagogue, everything. And when they settled at Sali, the Portuguese were trying to first to convince and try to force the king of the area, who was a Sarah king, to expel the Jews, saying that they don't practice a good religion, they are bad, everything, name calling, really trying to play the fear tactics game. But it did not work, and Sarah king refuses to expel the Jews, and saying that they did nothing to me, and it's part of our tradition to be open to the to be open to strangers. So that's what we'll keep doing. And so we are working here in my department, me and some colleagues, really to see if we can have really because of this historical event, because of the synagogue, and because what happened to in Sebekotan, which is not far from Bo, Tahiri, to have a small museum of maritime intolerance. So that's really how we call it. So we are working on it. So we see what will happen. We are really looking for funding, all the things. So if some of you guys listening or watching can help, so you have my emails, just contact us to see how you can help us really make this dream come true. So that's really something that is very important, because we'll see really how the history of Jews and the history of blacks sometimes really how they come to parallel, sometimes I even really mix mingle. And that's really how I came to really to hold the things about Holocaust. It was really trying to, doing some research on the constitution of Africa and Africans in anthropology during starting the 16th, 17th century. And that's how really see social Darwinism, the effect of social Darwinism on both blacks and Jews. So I found it very, very interesting. So that's how I decided to have that course, really trying to see that parallel, that mixed history, trying to see that, okay, these two people, they have suffered a lot throughout history. And sometimes the history is so parallel, so close. So really, it's time for somebody to showcase it. So that's why we want to have that museum. And since part of this whole suffering was done through the sea or via the sea, that's why we want to call it Museum of Maritime Intolerance. So again, we'll see what will happen, but we are working on that. Hopefully we'll get something. And what we get from Sebekatan, the history, was in part thanks to a very old gentleman now. Must be almost 90 now. His name is Khalidi Diallo. And he was a steward at Sebekatan camp during World War II. Of course, because of his age, he does not remember a lot. But now you have his son, and really, unfortunately, his son is putting a lot of his own perspective into the story, so which is really making it hard to really to have some good data, some good account about Khalidi Diallo's memory on Sebekotan. So, but that's what historians do. So we are dealing with it, and hopefully we'll get some good information about that. And some things that we learn about the Holocaust is there's not enough Holocaust education geared towards people of African people of Africa and its diaspora. So not a lot of Holocaust education, and it's really unfortunate, again, because of this cost history, this parallel experience, very, very interesting. And advocates of Holocaust education must all agree that there's not enough Holocaust education and research geared towards Africa and its diaspora. And again, no Holocaust education, not a lot of Holocaust research. Why? There were Jews who were living in Africa. And of course, Jews were in Africa even during the medieval era, of course. Moses and in Egypt. So, so there's a long history of Jewish presence in Africa. There was some research done on that, but really the experience of Jews in Senegal, in West Africa during World War II, now we're starting to get some, some people focusing on that, but really it's not compared to what, to the volume of research, for instance, in North, about Jews in North Africa. Of course, I'm not talking about Jews in Europe. It's too much. Not too much, but too big, yeah. And the fact that there's not enough Holocaust education, not enough Holocaust research in Africa is very unfortunate for three historical reasons. So the first is that anti-Semitism and anti-Black racism were part of Nazi ideology and practice. The Nazis did not, we'll come to it later on, they did not like blacks, they hated them. And in the events, they tried to find history to justify it and to explain it. We will talk about that. The second is that Africa was a laboratory where a lot of Nazi practices were executed. Racial categorization, serialization, forced scientific experimentation, and the Hero massacre. Again, and even there are some scholars who are saying that if we did stop the Germans in Namibia, if they were called out since the experience in Namibia, maybe they would have waken up mankind. But of course, we have to take into consideration also how a lot of these people from this so-called democracy in Europe at that time were already fallen victim of the propaganda. But again, you can see that a lot of these things that happened in Germany were first experienced in Africa, mostly in Namibia. Also, the third reason is that there was a lot of black POWs who received a harsh treatment from the Nazi capture. And this was due in large part to the Nazi racial ideology and Hitler's denunciation of French African troops in Mein Kampf. Yeah, in Mein Kampf, he accused Africans a lot of things that are really being responsible of the harsh treatment of the German, Rhineland, or the thing. And again, he said that those Africans were able to do it because the Jews allowed them to do it, which was really, really not true. But again, you can see really how in Mein Kampf, again, he tried to tie the hatred of Africans with his hatred also of Jews. So the racist ideology was served as a centerpiece for the Nazi regime. And there are also some, like I said, some fascinating and little understood aspect of Nazi practices that relate directly to Africa. For instance, we have this picture, which is really interesting, really saying that white girls should not be befriended with black girls. And again, this is really part of the propaganda that I'm talking about, and this really anti-black propaganda, anti-African propaganda. You should not marry Africans. If you do it, if you have kids, they are basta, the basta of Rhineland. If you befriend with Africans with blacks, you should be a racial shame. Again, and those pictures were taken really, I got them from the US Holocaust Memorial Museum. I thank them a lot about, my say, I will talk to it later. And because of other things, because of the lack of enough research and Holocaust education, I initiated the Holocaust education and research activities in Senegal. I will just talk about it really for 2 minutes. And again, why Senegal? Because Senegal, in terms of history, there are direct links with with the First World War and the Second World War, and also with the Holocaust. Of course, I did talk about the Holocaust a while ago. Let me talk about the direct links with World War I. At the end of the First World War, following the Versailles Treaties, France decided to use its colonial army, called les Tirailleurs Sénégalais, to occupy the Rhineland. And because Dakar was the capital of French colonial West Africa, the decision was executed from Dakar. So Dakar was really implementing this policy. And since there was African soldiers who were part of the French army, those African soldiers were taken to Ireland so to help the French in its occupation policies. And Hitler denounced the occupation of the Rhineland by African soldiers. He called children from mixed race, from mixed black German parents, the Bassa of Rhineland. Okay. He also accused Jews of being responsible for bringing African soldiers into the Rhineland. Okay. So you can see how he can tie his hatred to these two groups of people. Senegal also, because there are direct links with World War II. The TWR Senegalese who were enrolled by France and other Senegalese-born persons were among the victims at some concentration camps like Buchenwald, like Dresden, we come to it. But there were also other Senegalese who were captured and sent to prison. One of those prisoners became later the first president of Senegal, Léopold Sédar Senghor. And this has really influenced, this historical experience has influenced Senghor in his philosophy of universal civilization, saying that we might be different, but we all belong to a common mankind. And Léopold Sédar Senghor was caught by the Nazis and sent to La Charité-sur-Loire. He was detained for 18 months in various camps and finally sent to Front Satellite 230 in Poitiers. And he talked about this experience also in his poem. And he was later released in 1942. And I forgot that Senghor was also part of the underground movement in this prison camp. Okay. So he was released in 1942 and he talked about this experience. And something very important, because of his experience in those concentration camps, when Senegal became independent, Israel was among the first countries to recognize the independence of Senegal because of Senghor, because of the historical experience witnessed by Senghor in these camps. Okay. And also there were historical records, okay, that show that Jews born in Senegal, as well as all the Senegalese, are among the victims in notorious concentration camps. And I got those names, again, from my stay at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. During my stay there, we received a grant to stay there to do my research for 6 months. We have here the name of some of the victims. So this is a work in progress. It's far from being over. But again, because of the teaching load, because of the research, it's slowing me a little bit down. But you can see early the name, the date of birth, and the camp. And because of this sad experience, because of the suffering, because of the fact that we need to remember just victims, so we'll call their name to honor their life. And we will let some students and led by my colleague Bosotal and her organization to help us name those victims.
Amadiba, né en 1919 au Sénégal, est mort à Freedom.
Ekman Cruz, né le 3/10 mois 1876 à Gorée, morte à Auschwitz. Ekman Gabriel, né le 28/4 mois 1902 à Saint-Louis, est morte à Auschwitz.
Le 3/3 mois 1912 à Saint-Louis, voilà Burger Botsen.
Sergio, né en 1919 au Sénégal, est mort à Stalag, 155.
Edouard Pichot,
né en 1923 à Thiès, est mort à Destin.
Henri Giroux, né le 7-5-1913 à Rufisque, décédé à Heidelberg.
Albert Périssé, né en 1908 à Dakar et mort en Senegal.
Geneviève Lengol est née à Dakar en 1914 et morte à Saint-Germain à Reims.
Albert Périssé, né le 23 décembre 1908 à Dakar au Sénégal et mort à November.
Kurt Braun, born in 1923 in Chess. Marcel Defendini, born in 1914 in St. Louis. Sek Fall, born in 1903 in Dakar. René Palus, born in 1922 in Dakar. Gérard Pinault, born in 1927 in Dakar. All died at Buchenwald, one of the many concentration camps during the Holocaust within Germany and outside. In this Genocide Awareness Month, the Young Advocates for Human Rights joins the efforts to remember. Young people from all across the country sent in messages to commemorate. They sent in messages with the willingness to understand and to learn. May the souls of the departed rest in peace.
Amen. 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 And again, this is really important to remember. But the best way to remember is to make sure that we never forget. As long as we don't forget, as long as what we learn, as long as what we research is made into practice, as long as what we do research, as long as the result of our research is transformed into activism for peace, for harmony, for cultural understanding, for mutual respect, then it's really worthwhile doing research. And this is why I'm doing some Holocaust education activities here in Senegal. I led the initiative to start commemorating the January 27 International Holocaust Commemoration Day, thanks to a partnership with the Embassy of Israel in Dakar, UNESCO, and the UN Information Bureau in Dakar. And the commemoration is held at the Cheikh Anta Diop University, the biggest Senegalese university with close to, 100,000 students. Okay. I'm sorry. And so we invite students to talk about this thing, so you can see really, again, using some historical archives, because images are very powerful. Sometimes images, you can just let the images talk. It's very, very important for those who have some knowledge about the Holocaust. You remember all this, those images, really propaganda. Also, really, those African American soldiers who went to the concentration camps, they took pictures to show what happened. So sometimes you don't need to talk a lot. You just let the images talk about themselves. And that's the best way sometimes to let people realize what happened. And hopefully, and through that interaction, make sure that then you can all learn, you can all remember, this is very, very important. Again, during our first commemoration, our country guest of honor was really Rwanda. And of course, you know why Rwanda? Because of the genocide. And this is not only because of the genocide, but also because really a way of showing that there's something about mankind. We are very hard-headed sometimes. We don't learn from history, or we seem not to learn from history. When the Holocaust happened, we all say never again. But it did not happen. It did not stop from other genocides from happening. But it's not because some other genocide are happening that they will stop saying never again. So we have to keep pushing. We have to keep pushing to education, to public awareness, to information, to also teaching, to also training. Hopefully, mankind one day will learn, and when mankind learn, it will be good for everybody. And here again, this is really the commemoration, the first commemoration. I was the ambassador of Israel, ambassador of Rwanda, the president of the university. So it was, and of course, we invited government authorities, we invited the diplomatic corps, we invited the media, we invited high school and college students to come to listen, also from testimony from one survivor. The first was a survivor from France, and you can see really it was well attended. So it's a really big amphitheater, 1,500 seats, all full. So it was really, and that's always what happened every time that we have it in January 27. So it's really well attended. So we did a lot of work. We put a lot of work on it to make sure that it's well received and it's well coordinated, because I have several partners working with me during the commemoration. So again, during the first commemoration, Rwanda was our guest of honor. Why is it coming second time? I don't know. Okay. And during that commemoration, of course, we invite some students, high school, show one Holocaust film. There are some speeches, also the testimony of a Holocaust survivor. And also we ask 1 month before to the invited high school to come and do something about the Holocaust. Sometimes some come with art, sometimes some people come with some poems, some drama, other things really. And at the end, they receive prizes, they receive diplomas, and really to try to encourage them. And also, we gave them some books about the Holocaust, and those books are kept in their library. And the diplomas are very important because that's something also to encourage them. And here, before finishing, I would like to thank the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum for the Paul Henzik postdoctoral fellowship in 2013-2014. And again, this is what we wanted to say about the Holocaust in Senegal. It's not just Senegal, because it was French colonial Africa, and most of the Jews were in Senegal, but they also now we start to discover in the archives there were some Jews in Guinea. The forestry was going on, and also some in Mali. So it's really a work in progress. And then, like I say, plus also the cultural things about the synagogue. We're just trying to have a wider and deeper picture about Jewish experience in Senegal during World War II, and then trying to see how to tie it with African experience since the 17th century, and then really to see why these two groups of people, how these two groups of people share some historical experience. Really, this historical experience sometimes were very, very difficult, with really religious persecution, racism, forced labor, of course, murders also. And so this is what we wanted to show the world, and hope that you did learn something a bit about Senegalese history, about Jewish history. And it's really interesting because with what we are doing in Senegal, we know that now Jewish history is not just in Europe, it's really worldwide. So it's interesting to see just Jewish minorities, their experiences toward history. And again, thank you very much, and bye-bye.
That was Dr. Aliounne Deme in Senegal. We are so grateful for that presentation. Doctor, I know you're on the Zoom with us. Thank you again for sharing your wisdom, the history and context of your country. It's so important when we think about the legacy of genocide and mass atrocities that we look far back. When I give some presentations about the history of the atrocity prevention movement, I've been working on starting as far back as I can go, up to 500 plus years in the era of colonialism. And so I'm grateful that in our program we were able to bring that context and the diversity of that wisdom to our experience. Thank you again.